Thank you so much, Tseko. Ladies and gentlemen, let's show appreciation for Tseko and her wonderful devotee team. So, good morning, Dumelang, Sanibanani, Masharoni Abuti, Absheni, Tobela, Molweni, Lochani, Huyamora, Namaste, and Hare Krishna to one and all of you today. Thank you. So it's a really nice, small, intimate crowd, so we can really engage on the content and the discussion that we have here today. My name is Sureka Singh, and I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, founded by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And you're going to get to know him definitely today. I'm also here to welcome you on behalf of the Inner Voice Productions, the producers of the film, and ISKCON Gauteng for the launch and screenings of the film. Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all. In our crowd, amidst us today, we have His Grace, John, and Her Grace, Jean Grisser, the film directors and producer. We were hoping to have A.B. Musa here with us today, but he's given us his blessings and great partnership with regards to the cinema. We also have an esteemed lineup of guests, which include dignitaries that are made up of spiritualists, leadership, and agents of change. Mr. Jack Devnarayan, Mr. Zarif Minty, welcome. Dr. Lucas Malloy, Ms. Kalosha Ramlal, Dr. Mani Singh, and of course, all you beautiful souls who are spending your Sunday with us here today. Because today, we're going to transform the cinema into conscious cinema. That's what we're doing. It's not commercial, it's conscious cinema. Actually, I was bursting with elation. I'm trying to keep myself together as well, because it's been, I think, just about 2 months or under 2 months that we've started discussions and talking about the film coming to South Africa. And one of the key persons, Dr. Ramson, who is also here in our midst, that has been speaking to the director and producer for the last, well, since 2015, in terms of bringing the film here. So now it's here on the African shore. And what's interesting about it is that it's been, Srila Prabhupada first came to South Africa in terms of the African continent. So it's amazing that the film launch is happening in South Africa. Isn't that amazing? So the theme of today's event is this. We all are aware of the atrocities against humanity, war, abuse, racism, and the greed for power. And corruption, as we're very much aware of that is happening right now. Srila Prabhupada said that everyone must be a leader, then people will be happy. Let's just think about that for a moment. Everyone must be a leader, then exactly. So it means that it's not dependent just on the senior leadership, it's dependent on each one of us who are the worker bees as well. We are unpacking a truly remarkable leadership. We want to encourage the need and lead for consistent enthusiasm. So consistent enthusiasm. We can't be consistent, enthusiastic just for 5 minutes or for 5 days or for 5 months. It's continuous. We're looking at integrity in ethical leadership that is guided by spiritual or higher intelligence. That is the theme for today. In terms of the running order for the program, it's thought-provoking. Please participate and absorb and share your experience and knowledge. It's a small group, so please feel comfortable. Don't be intimidated by the big screen, you know. It's really just for us to be together and have a conversation. I'm now going to hand over to the MC for today. He is Mfundo Nkosi. He's a published academic author of the book called The Stormwater Characteristics of Green Roof Trays and Bags, a student and a scholar of Bhakti Yoga, which is the ancient science of self-realization. He's traveled in Africa extensively, studying and teaching yoga. He's also one of the youngest members of the Board of Trustees of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. He also holds academic qualifications in engineering, his BSc honors, and he's also, he's got his South Africa Bhakti Shastri spiritual studies certificates. So I think I'm now going to hand over to him to take you through to the program. Thank you very much and welcome.
What's always fascinated me about leadership is its impact on people. It's remarkable. You can take a different person, put them in the same position, and sentiment sways from one corner of the spectrum to the other. Isn't that true? Especially today for us in South Africa. It brought me to question, or to bring up a question within myself. What is the single greatest attribute that a leader can possess? Is it position or titles? Is it scholarship or wealth? Or is it eloquence and beauty? In today's society, no one would blame you for thinking that that is the qualification to lead. But many a leadership expert has written about the essential feature that defines leadership. The true measure of leadership is influence. Nothing more and nothing less. Looking at the life and story of Srila Prabhupada, it's extraordinary. At the mature age of 69, with a single trunk full of translated books, 40 rupees in his pocket, which virtually amounted to nothing at the time, with a distinct Indian accent, dressed in the typical robes of a Swami, he traversed the ocean right at the peak of the counterculture revolution that was sweeping the Western world. And from there, he was able to influence the minds of thousands of young men and women to start a spiritual movement that touched every corner of the globe. It should not have worked. If you think about it, it shouldn't have worked, but it did. And that's the remarkable thing about Srila Prabhupada's story. It's such a compelling story because Srila Prabhupada's influence was based on nothing else but spiritually connected love. And isn't that what we're looking for? Isn't everyone looking for lasting happiness, whether as an individual or as a collective society? We all want lasting happiness. The problem that we face, as Srila Prabhupada says, is that we're eternal beings looking for eternal happiness in a temporary world. Gathered here today are thought leaders from business, government, and the media. We have spiritual leaders and community leaders. And even for some of you who may not fancy yourself to be leaders, we're all mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers. So we all have someone that we look up to, or who looks up to us, rather. What Srila Prabhupada's life has brought to bear for us all is that it is not enough to consider good character and moral conviction to be the defining factor of what makes a leader good. In order for us to actually bridge the gap between our attempt to actually realize a true transformation of society, a true coming of enlightenment and realization and communal and social reconciliation, we have to take the life of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's life challenges us to not only seek and to not only become leaders that connect the world to a lasting happiness through spiritually connected love. So I'd like to call upon our first speaker for today. She is a youth leader in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, South Africa. And she has represented South Africa at the International Leadership Sangha in India. She also has a career and accolades in the financial regulatory industry. So her name is Kalosha Ramlal, and I'd like you to give her a warm round of applause and welcome her on stage.
One of my first and fondest memories of Srila Prabhupada was during the unveiling ceremony at the for the ISKCON circle in Chatsworth, Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal. The circle was renamed to Bhaktivedanta Swami Circle, a name in honor and recognition of Srila Prabhupada. I'm sure all of you know, thank you to Sureka, that Srila Prabhupada has a very long, beautiful Indian name. It's Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, hence the name Bhaktivedanta Swami Circle. So here I was, a 10-year-old girl, standing at the circle located on the corner of the Hare Krishna temple in Chatsworth, and the entire congregation was around me. On that splendid day, while standing before the circle sign, I can remember the look of pride and elation on everyone's face. It was such a day of a great accomplishment, and my heart was struck with a sense of appreciation for Srila Prabhupada through the love of my elders. So I looked to my elders, and their love made me love. Their pride made me proud. Their eagerness to glorify a man of impact in their lives made me yearn to be passionate about something in my life. You all can agree with me that renaming a street in honor of someone that has changed lives and communities is no small feat. My elders in that moment were my examples. Their disposition was a catalyst of my feelings. It's been more than 20 years since, and I still mark that moment and my appreciation for great leadership that compels individuals to do amazing things. One may call this the butterfly effect of great leadership, or to a curious little Indian girl growing up in South Africa like I once was, you would call it setting a good example that makes others set a good example, that makes others set a good example, and so on and so on. I fast-track to today and the global society that we have become. My experience with youth locally and abroad echoes a common need, and that is to find great role models and great leaders. Taking care of a child or a young adult isn't just about feeding, clothing, or educating them. And educating them on what? On topics of arithmetic, reading, the sciences, and so forth. Achieving these as a basis for all of our kids would be great, but providing the tools for leading a fulfilled and value-adding life to society requires much more. What is needed are more leaders like yourselves to take up the service of creating systems that provide holistic sustenance to firstly raise a child, but also to think about what is required to sustain an internal growth that is required at different stages of life to support what is needed as we grow old. In truth, leadership is a dance. It's a dance of intelligence, a dance of emotional awareness, and conscious action. Without even noticing it, or even using those naming conventions, youth in general gravitate towards those who enact this dance as part of their daily living. Knowing this dance and not sharing it in itself is a disservice. So one of my humble submissions today to each and every one of you is to please share your dance. Take up this beautiful service of giving your time, your talent to even one youth. Seek out those organizations that are placing emphasis on raising youth in a holistic way, or at least try to assist in building these such ecosystems, which is so needed. What is required more now than ever are conscious leaders to our youth, with the hope that they can fulfill this prophecy of being agents of change themselves in many years to come, and specifically within our country. If we can raise the profile of such leaders as Srila Prabhupada and many other unsung heroes, then our time can surely come where we can inspire more to take up this calling. The butterfly effect will continue on, and then we will see change finally happening. Thank you so much.
I'd like to now welcome on stage our honored guests and the directors of the film that we are honoring today, John Grisser and Jean Grissa. John Grissa has been involved with the Hare Krishna movement and has worked in the videography and photography since the 1970s, and is highly involved in the kirtan scene in the Hare Krishna movement. And Jean Grissa is also the co-director of this film, and I'd like you to give them a very warm welcome on stage with a round of applause.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having us here. It's a thrill to be in South Africa. We were here once before at separate times. I was here for the Durban Rath Yatra many years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago. My wife, maybe a couple of years ago. But it's always a pleasure to come again and revisit friends. The talks so far have been very general about leadership. I was asked to give a bit of background of myself and the history of making the film. I was a California boy, grew up on the beach as a surfer sometimes. Prabhupada said, surfer, they're also sufferers in different ways. So I went to the University of California, Berkeley. It so happens at the exact time of those riots, the student unrest. So I was kind of a product of that, but not really, because I was kind of an observer more than a participant. I got my degree in history and fine arts. My father was a university professor in history, so I followed his footsteps, but I really didn't take that up. I was really meant for, I realized later, the arts. Went into the Peace Corps. I had this vague idea of helping people early on. And I went to the U.S. Peace Corps as a teacher in Malaysia. Spent 3 years in Malaysia. There was a good cultural exchange, but I can't say that I really helped people that much. I feel another teacher could have done kind of the same thing from local Malaysian people. It was a good experience, and it kind of prepared me for the early days in India, where we had a very rough lifestyle, very primitive conditions with Prabhupada in India. The way I was introduced to the movement was through an assignment, a photographic assignment I got in the summer of 1970. And that was to cover the Hare Krishna movement in New York City. I had seen them, many people had seen them, millions of people had seen them on the streets. They were very visible. Prabhupada had his disciples and followers go out into the streets in chanting parties, 8 and 10 hours a day. That was the main engagement for everyone in those early days. And it was kind of a brilliant move because everyone knew about us. It was an immediate call to attention. When you see the bald, robed Hare Krishnas all over the streets of America. And so I did that article. Jean helped me. She was the writer, I was the photographer. I was very much attracted immediately to the movement, the food, the philosophy, the smells, the atmosphere, and really the kindness of the devotees. That really impressed me. I wasn't looking for religion at the time, but I was swept up, I could say, in the tradition and the atmosphere. I went to India to do a master's degree in photography. I had entered the master's degree program at Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. And I had to do a thesis in the summer of 1970, so I decided to do it on the movement in India, trying to trace the roots and the origins of Krishna consciousness in India through my photography. So I went to India in the summer of, actually December 1970, met Srila Prabhupada in a very small town in Surat. I can say that going to India was like going home. I felt this very strong attraction to India at that time, and still do. And I couldn't explain why. Prabhupada answered a lot of those questions in his philosophy and understanding of life. Jean joined me later, a couple of months after I met Prabhupada, and we traveled to India together, and then we eventually took initiation, and we got married also in India, in the town of Vrindavan, where Krishna grew up. And Prabhupada presided over that wedding. We stayed in India for 2.5 years. My instructors, the master's degree program, were wondering what has happened to John. So we stayed there for 2.5 years. We helped Srila Prabhupada in his Juhu project. If you know the temple in Juhu, Mumbai, it's a very grand project. At the time, there was nothing there. We were living, again, in very primitive conditions. But we sacrificed that because we had very great affection for Prabhupada. We wanted to serve him. He changed our life. I mean, it's quite astonishing for somebody to change your life totally. And that's what Prabhupada did. While we were in India, we got a request to make the first film on the movement. We had been sending movies and still photographs back to people in the devotees in the West. They liked what they saw. They asked us to do a film. We've released that Hare Krishna People film, the first film in the movement, and our first film as producers, directors. And that was released in 1974. After that, we went on to make about 8 or 9 documentaries, mostly about Srila Prabhupada and his movement. We made another biographical film on Prabhupada in 1983 called Your Ever Well-Wisher. That film did not get much viewership. It went around the temples, but it really didn't reach the public. And that was our idea for the film Hare Krishna, to really reach out and tell Prabhupada's story to the public, because his story, as we heard, is incredible. So at this point, I'd like to invite my wife, Jean. She's also Vishaka Devi, initiated by Srila Prabhupada. I'm also Yadu Baradas. Please say a few words.
Thank you all very much for coming this morning, this Sunday morning. We appreciate your being here so early to see this film coming up. My story, although it intersects with John's, it's quite different in that I was not looking for spiritual life. In fact, I was opposed to spiritual life. My parents were atheists, and they raised my brother and myself as atheists, and I was quite an active preacher as an atheist. So I had a long way to go to become a theist, and that was traversed by being in India and being with Srila Prabhupada. He had such a profound effect on the people that he was with. So I am a living example of that profound effect. And I could just say a few words about the film, the making of the film. This took 4 years to make, by far the longest film project that we'd ever worked on, and also by far the most expensive. And our major challenge was that we had a veritable mountain of material to work with. We had 31 hours of footage of Srila Prabhupada and 1,800 hours of audio of Prabhupada. That means lectures and conversations. Probably 20,000 photographs of Prabhupada to choose from. And we interviewed about 40 people, both his followers and scholars who are familiar with his activities. So that came to about 100 hours. Beyond that, we had archival footage of the 60s, the environment that Prabhupada entered. And we also went to India and we did archival or background footage of Prabhupada's story growing up in India in a Vaishnava family. So to find the golden thread of Prabhupada's story was a great, great challenge for us. I really have to give credit to my husband for working tirelessly for 4 years, day and night, to make this film the success that it has been. We were actually remarkable. We were surprised how the audience is so touched by Prabhupada's story. And we're very gratified, and we're very honored to have been able to work on this film and bring it to you here in South Africa. Thank you so much again. Hare Krishna.
Just one last comment on the reviews. Probably my favorite review is from LA Yoga Magazine. And they said that Hare Krishna film is the second coming of Prabhupada. And my wife and I did follow Srila Prabhupada around filming his activities during his time. And this feels like the same thing, practically. We're on tour with Prabhupada again. So thank you so very much for being on tour with us here in South Africa. Hare Krishna.
Please give a huge round of applause to our honored guests today, Jean and John Grissa. I'd also like to mention to you that Jean Grissa, or as we affectionately know her as Mother Vishaka, is also the author of many books. And she has written more than 150 written works and photographic essays, all based on the teachings of Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita as it is. And her latest title is 5 years, 11 months, a lifetime of unexpected love. So please, this book is available today at the premiere of the movie. So it's an exclusive deal that you have today as our guests. Please get one on your way out, and who knows, you can even get a copy signed by the author themselves. So the book is available as you lead out. It's entitled 5 years, 11 months, a life and a lifetime of unexpected love by Vishaka Dasi. Next, I'd like to invite another very special guest, Rajesh Kumar. No, Jack Devnarain. Jack Devnarain is a veteran performance artist in the industry, an award-winning actor and chairman of the South African Guild of Actors. He is honestly one of my favorite actors on television, and don't tell people, but I watched you quite a lot on Isidingo. So please give him a warm round of applause and welcome you on stage.
It is a lovely group. I see some friends. AB has arrived. That's always a good sign. I know my friend Loiso is here as well. There he is. Yes, thank you, Loiso. Loiso wrote for me for many, many years as head writer on Isidingo. So try not to blame me for all the drama that took place. It was all Loiso's fault, actually. And he took a lot of pleasure in putting me through all kinds of agony and torture. I truly feel blessed being here. I think it started off as a cruel joke when Sureka invited me, because I'm not known as a religious man, but it's a testament to the group, to the organization, and to the love that you all have, that you were able to extend the invitation to me. Because the truth is, there's a big part of me that connects with the spiritual reality of what exists here. Through the organization, through the movement, I may not choose to name it or label it. It exists within me. This is a gift from my Father. And it's something that I treasure because it has created in me an idea and an understanding of my own journey in life. And again, I may not label myself as a leader. I choose to take on the role because it's important to me. And in the course of my career, I have discovered that there are things that I need to speak about. It's that important to me. There are injustices that I need to try and understand and to rectify. There are imbalances that I need to put right. And in stepping up to put these things right, I suppose I've acquired that label of leader. And if that is the case, then fine, I'll take it, I'll adopt it. There is something about being a leader, though, that I have come to understand. And it's at a certain point, you start to try and define what leadership is. And of course, you could be in this very venue when there's a big corporate group sitting here, and you'll come up with a very different kind of understanding of what a leader is. And you'll have a political group here again, and you'll have a different context and therefore a different definition. In my case, though, I'd like to bring it down to what is the essence of leadership. And I know we were discussing earlier, influence is a big deal when it comes to leadership. I'd like to extend the idea. I'd like to add to that definition not just influence, but I think there is a social compact. That's what it is. Because inherent to the idea of leadership, there has got to be an acceptance that this leader has a mandate from the people that he leads. That there are people who willingly submit to this person as a leader, so that this leader carries our voice, our name, our values and our virtues, our ideals and the principles by which we live. It's all invested in this person, and we give that mandate willingly. That's an important thing for me. That's what a leader has got to have. There's got to have a mandate in terms of that social compact. Beyond that, I think it's absolutely important, essential in fact, that the leader must have a sincere desire to serve. And I believe that is something that we are missing in the recent events of this country's political history. I can see that we have lost placing a demand on our leaders to serve. When I give you a mandate to speak with my voice, please understand that I need you then to acknowledge me. I need you as a leader to respect the voice that I have given you. That relationship is contained in that social compact, and it's something that we can never ever take for granted. When we invest ourselves in that leader, we expect the leader to respect us. We don't have enough of that, and it's something that I wish all of us must start to demand in future. No, not future, actually now. We start now. We must ask our leaders to respect us. A funny thing happens in that process of the social compact, though. When we have that leader, there's the mandate, you now speak with my voice, there's a strange thing that happens, and I see this regularly. We no longer hold ourselves to the same standards. We now expect the leader to live by the standards that we establish for them. Now we no longer ask ourselves to be transparent and accountable and respectful and to live a dignified life, a virtuous life. All of that is now invested in the leader that we've created. And social media is a very powerful thing also in this regard, because it's become a kind of a game where you create somebody who is at the center of attention, and then you take great pleasure in bringing them down. We tear them down because we can, because we say, well, we created it. We've established that, so now we've made you, now we can break you. It's a bizarre phenomenon. But we see this a lot. But I'd like to focus specifically on that idea of how is it, having established the leader, we now divest ourselves of the responsibility of all those virtues that we lived by, and now we say, no, that must reside in this leader. They have to hold themselves to that standard, and that's what we expect of them. And in expecting that of them, we are no longer part of that formula. We've removed ourselves. And that's something I want to challenge. I want to challenge everyone here in this small, delightful group full of love to say, are you living that life of accountability, transparency, responsibility that you expect of your leaders? Is it just their job? Or is it yours as well? I'm saying you cannot expect your leaders to live the kind of life that you want them to if you are not prepared to live it yourself. It is a point that Sureka made earlier. we are all leaders. If we can accept that we are all leaders, then we must be prepared to live by the same rules that we expect our leaders to live by. Then we can expect the most of our leaders. And if we can accept that we and our leaders all live by the same rules and can all be held accountable to the same rule book, then and only then can we say, I see God in you. And with that, namaste.
Thank you so much to Jack. I thought that was a very moving talk that you gave. And it is true that we should be able to see ourselves within our leaders. And Srila Prabhupada, in his teachings, would say that one cannot teach something unless they practice it themselves. So we thank you again, Jack, for giving us that wonderful talk. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Zarif Minty. He is a 23-year-old LLB graduate from the University of the Witwatersrand. Zarif is a thought leader and innovator. Zarif became the youngest national youth president in South African history at the tender age of just 18. So I'd like you to give Zarif a wonderful round of applause and welcome him on stage.
Hi guys, good morning. I think it's very important that we also celebrate people, right? So I just want to give a huge round of applause to Mr. Jack, who just came on before us. Can we just give him a huge round of applause? I'm also a motivational speaker as well, so I think I just want to liven up the energy a little bit. I'm someone who's very grateful, someone who's very humble as well. I believe in the concept. I believe that the most successful people are people who are humble and grateful. So I want you guys to say it with me, okay? I want you to say, I am grateful. Okay, but we're going to do it on 3, okay? 1, 2, 3. I am grateful. 1, 2, 3. I am grateful. Louder, guys. 1, 2, 3. I am grateful. Cool. So I'm also a motivational speaker. I'm an author. I have my book out in exclusive books at the moment. It's a national bestseller. It's called Empire. So it teaches people how to network, how to brand themselves, how to commercialize themselves. I'm also a lawyer. I have a few businesses as well. So I believe in entrepreneurship. But I'm also, something that I'm very passionate about is that I'm also a radio host. So I'm on the show called The Domino Effect on Massive Metro, which I do with Candice Mudisele. And we play, the show plays every single Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 12 o'clock. So it's all about inspiring people, motivating people. So we have big guests coming on, and we don't want to hear about their superficial life. We want to actually hear about how did they become successful. What failures did they go through? How long did it take them to get to their first success? So all of those things inspire people, inspire young people, and a lot of people gain knowledge from it. But the thing I'm very passionate about is the changing life segment, and I think it speaks very well to the platform today. So we encourage people to come through and send us requests, whether they're looking for internships, employment opportunities. So they'll email us, they'll WhatsApp us, they'll even DM us on Instagram, and we try our best to link them to corporates as well. So, we try to get them opportunities. The whole idea behind it, and that's why the show is called The Domino Effect, is that the minute you actually assist someone, so say you're giving someone the opportunity to get a bursary, they go out, they work really hard, they become successful. 5 years down the line, someone else is going to ask them for the same opportunity. And before you know it, it's going to be a ripple effect. They're going to definitely assist that person, and you'll have the domino effect running perfectly well. So I think that's also one of the most important aspects of leadership, is that you must be able to inspire people, but at the same time also be willing to give out leadership. It's about servant leadership. It's what Mr. Jack actually referred to earlier, is that we have to be servant leaders. We have to look at giving out to as many people as possible. I think that's the first pillar to a very good leader in a youth sense. I think the second thing comes down to something that affects a lot of young people in South Africa, which affects about 67% of people in South Africa, especially young people. So a young person wouldn't open up a business, or they wouldn't actually achieve something successfully in an academic sense, because they have this fear of failure. So they're scared that if they go out and actually take a proactive approach to do something and they fail at it, automatically they'll be ridiculed by all their friends and family. So it's something that stops a lot of people from succeeding. I spoke yesterday to about 1,000 students in Krugersdorp in a mall, and I won a show called One Day Lead on SABC One, season 4. So I was encouraging a lot of them to get involved as well. So season 7 is starting up and applications are available. A lot of them refuse to actually take part in it, not because they're not good enough or not because they're not talented enough, but because they just have that fear of failure in them. So I think it's something that needs to be obviously rectified moving forward. As a young leader and someone who wants to grow other leaders, it's very important that we remove the whole fear of failure when it comes to young people. The third point speaks perfectly to the situation and the platform we're at here. It also talks to some of the quotes that the Swami actually spoke about, which is the whole concept again about failure and success, right? So they say that failure is actually just a pillar of success. You have to keep on trying until you actually become successful. And it touches down on the whole concept of having spiritual and valued-based leadership. So a lot of our leaders today, and in a political standpoint as well, you're looking at what our leaders are doing today, a lot of them base their leadership on money, on monetary value, on superficial lifestyles. A lot of them want to look amazing on Instagram. They want to, have the nicest cars, live in the biggest houses. And when that's your value point, so that's what you're actually looking at for your piece of motivation or your inspiration, then clearly you're not a good enough leader in society, and we need to rectify that. So I think it comes down to how you hold yourself accountable. The fact that you need to have a very good moral compass. You need to be looking at yourself in a very high standpoint so that when anyone else actually considers you, you respect yourself enough so that you will respect everyone else around you. You respect the fact that you're actually holding on to society, and you have a mandate in society to look after people in the community. I think that's a very, very important standpoint. I think another very important thing that people need to rectify and needs to change in South Africa when it comes to leadership is that we have this idea that leadership is only based in a political standpoint, right? It's not the case at all. And I always like using this one example where, we can have an amazing president right now and he can speak amazingly in parliament, but will he actually be able to directly influence the life of someone who's sitting in Lenasia right now who's thinking of committing suicide? Do you know what I mean? I think we need to look at the whole concept of what leadership actually is. It's not just the political leadership. We also have student leadership, we have community leadership, and we need to start encouraging those platforms as well. We need to start building up youth leadership and community leadership in South Africa so that someone within the community of Lenasia will be able to assist a young person moving forward. I just want to end off this small segment just by using a quote of someone I actually really I'm inspired by, someone who's very phenomenal, someone who's a great actor, but he's also someone who has done exceptionally well speaking to young people. His name is Denzel Washington, and I just want to actually, emphasize two of his quotes in particular. He says, "The chances you take, the people you meet, the people you love, and the faith that you have, that's what's going to define you. So make sure that you never just inspire to make a living, inspire to make a difference." Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much to Zarif. I thought that was a very inspirational talk, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom at such a young age to us today. I'd like to welcome on stage now Dr. Singh, also known as His Grace Govardhan Prabhu, his initiated spiritual name. Govardhan Prabhu is a trustee of the African BBT, trustee of the Global BBT, Director of the ISKCON South Africa Property Company, GBC Co-National Secretary of South Africa, Chairman of the Board of the Global BTG Magazine, and Advisor to the Mayapur Master Plan Committee. So we welcome Govardhan Prabhu on stage.
Good morning. So I'm delighted to be here in this very intimate gathering, more particularly being in the company of Jack and Zarif, is it? Zarif? Fantastic. It's really amazing. Just wanted to touch on what the previous three speakers spoke about. Zarif was talking about this youth leadership. Srila Prabhupada was a youth leader. When he actually went to America, all his followers were all youth. In a sense. They were all young people. There was no one there like in their 60s or 50s like I am. And he spoke about entrepreneurship and leadership, and Jack spoke about responsible accountability, and Jean spoke about the seismic change from an atheist, all the swing around to become a devotee, and that's quite amazing. What I wanted to do this morning is just share with you my own little journey and perspectives of Bhaktivedanta Swami. Of course, Bhaktivedanta Swami was not an ordinary person. You may take my view with some prejudice because I'm one of his, I'm an evangelist for his brand. Because when I was a young man, 14, I was a practicing Christian. And I saw these Hare Krishnas with this mantra on the street, and I was thinking, I have to have a conversation with these people. So I went there with the intention of trying to get my view across. But the person who was there busy playing the drum, he kind of identified that I was a kind of fanatical, offbeat person. And he said, listen man, we don't have the time to chat, but here's a book. Take this book and maybe, we can have a chat later on. So I had a kind of like a magnetic push-pull relationship with this book. Because I couldn't, I came to talk to him, I can't take his book. But I eventually took the book. That was a Wednesday in April 1982. The day after, on Thursday, I was a totally transformed person, just by reading 50 pages of that book. So I am most certainly a great believer in exactly what you were talking about, having an open mind and being able to assess if you see something valuable in society, some relationship that's valuable, then you should pursue that. Of course, the movement that the Swami started institutionally is only 50 years old. 50 years is not a long time. Here is a man in his 70s. He was schooled for 50 years in the British system because he lived in India. India was under British rule. But he was such a genius in the way he conceived and developed things that he left India, a sacred village in India, and he went across, not to a British country, not to London. He went to America. And at that time, if you read the late 60s, the economics of the world had shifted to America after the World War. And America was now the center of trade flows and commercial activity. So Bhaktivedanta Swami, he boards this steamship, a cargo ship, not like traveling on a first-class aeroplane. We heard 40 rupees, $7. He had a few books. He even carried an umbrella. Maybe he thought it was going to rain in America, but he carried an umbrella. And he took 35 days on the ship, and by divine dispensation, what you see today is it's a total miracle. Now, I am a student of economics, and I teach the subject. So when I see some of these things, my mind naturally tends to gravitate. How do you quantify this thing? How do you measure? What's the yardstick? Does this make sense? Well, we did a calculation the other day. This Swami who started this Hare Krishna mantra, he of course, he was a transmitter of truth, so he wasn't really interested in money or material things. But he was a unique person in the sense that although he had so little, his conviction was so great. He was able to multiply that faith capital that he had to an extent that from the $7, he built what could perhaps be between a $2 to $4 billion enterprise. That's like, if you take $2 billion, that's like a 45% compound interest for 50 years. You'd arrive at $2 billion. Now, I can tell you that because we teach economics, we follow these things very carefully. There isn't anybody that I know of who's created that kind of capital value by not even being there. He just issues the instruction, and because of his inspirational and navigational relationship, he stands back, and those that he's empowered, they just exponentially execute his order. It's just amazing. And also he was so aware of the circumstances of this world that the teachings that he brought was coming from the time of creation. So you cannot temper, you cannot moderate it. The doctrinal integrity was the heart of what he was presenting. But when he arrived in America, he was, he met these species of people who were like leading a completely hedonistic lifestyle. And here he's coming to tell them things that is not possible for them to do. It's just inconceivable. He was telling them give up drugs, but their whole culture was based on drugs. Of course, the rest you'll see in the movie. Now, when CNN was looking at the top 100 people in the world over 50 who did something extraordinary and were extremely successful, this Swami came out at 22, number 22. I think Ronald Reagan was 28 on that list or something. So quite clearly, it's not just those who are his followers identify and see that he's done something extraordinary. The best trackers of this kind of social movements in the world, they've done it also. Now, if you consider also this market capitalization that I'm talking about for ISKCON, the society that he created, his management style, if you study advanced management, our young men here will know, there's what's called a contrarian leader. A contrarian leader is somebody who issues the order, he empowers the person to execute that order, and he just steps back. And that person, empowered by that authority or that instruction, he goes and carries a mountain on his back. Prabhupada was the best contrarian leader because he was dealing with these free-spirited American young boys and girls. He went to them to a rock concert, can you believe it? He nurtured their devotion. You'll see in our midst two living examples of what he has created. Two wonderful persons, Jean and John. I mean, it's just amazing just to be in their company and the kind of sacrifices that they make. Then his teaching influenced art, literature, Vedic ecology. If you have if you're interested in climatology and what's happening in the world, Srila Prabhupada started to speak about this before it even became a dominant agenda item in the world. Before the United Nations started to grapple with this idea of climate change, Bhaktivedanta Swami was already speaking about it. He was talking about a healthy lifestyle. Do you know that he has inspired a string of vegetarian restaurants throughout the world? Whether you're in Paris, or whether you're in London, you're in Stockholm, you'll find a vegetarian restaurant called Govinda's. That's the brand. He inspired that, the idea of healthy living. So he created farms, schools, eco-villages, and his love for society was so great, genuine love, genuine care, that when people were prohibited from entering, like, for example, in Jagannath Puri, there's a huge temple. You and I cannot go there. Even Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister of India, even she was not allowed to go into this temple. You have to be somebody born in that kind of discrimination they had. What did Bhaktivedanta Swami do? He took the festival out of India and put it in the Western world. Now in every city in the world, you have this festival called Festival of Chariots. That was his extent of his Ubuntu, or his love, mutual respect, a foundational basis of Vedic life. Of course, himself, he was a prolific author. He wrote over 70 books. And I must just say that as a person involved with his books and translating of his books, I'm very grateful that to translate some of these books into African languages. We've done isiZulu, we've done a book in Amharic the other day, and I wanted to say something, but Sureka is can I just say this quickly, Sureka? We were in India last week, and 2 weeks ago, and somebody was saying that they were speaking about management. Like we're speaking about leadership and management here. I want to narrate the story to you and just conclude with that. In the middle of the night, in November 1976, this Swami was resting. He was ill. So he calls one of his young Jewish disciples, a person named Giriraj, in the middle of the night, and asks him, what will happen when I'm gone? What will happen to this movement I have created? So of course this young Jewish boy, very intelligent person, you'll see everything about this movement is based on this mantra, Hare Krishna. So he started saying, well, if we just chant Hare Krishna and remain pure, and everything would work. But this Swami wasn't taken by that. He paused, and then he said something. He said, organization. And then this Giriraj was straining to hear, what is he saying? And then he paused and he said, intelligence. Then he said in one word, organization and intelligence. Now leadership fundamentally is around organization and intelligence. If you study advanced management, what you would see, there's a thing called organizational intelligence. All big companies on the stock exchange in New York, Fortune 500 companies, follow this rule of organizational intelligence. So the Swami was talking about organizational intelligence. He is perhaps the greatest teacher of Vedic knowledge and culture and wisdom and ethical management, leadership. He's talking organizational intelligence. Organizational intelligence, how do you respond to the complexity of this world based on your experience, What does organization learn? How does a new leadership structure, sculptor, reposition themselves so they remain relevant? And at the heart of all of this is absolute integrity. Integrity means not just that we demand it of other people, we demand that they should be not corrupt, but we ourselves are happy to pay a 20 rand fine to a traffic officer if we transgress the speed of the road. Ethical management means it's so deeply ingrained in your system that you're not just incorruptible, you won't even entertain the thought of such a thing. And you can't be a godly person if the fundamentals of being patriotic to your country and its constitution, the laws of the land, if those things start to flirt us, then we can't be ethical, isn't it? So Bhaktivedanta Swami, I want to stop you. Bhaktivedanta Swami was that kind of person. When he was in America, you would buy a computer. At the time when he was there, it cost you $137,000. Computers first came out. And in that computer, you can only do 4,000 words. Today you buy an iPhone, $600, and you can do much more than what that $137,000 computer was. The point is time, place, and circumstances. He adjusted an ancient culture, he tuned it, fine-tuned it, presented it to the West. He has now handed it over to his disciples. 2 of them are here, and we are learning from them how we would present this to the next generation of people. That is navigational leadership. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Govardhan Prabhu. I thought it's wonderful to actually see the extent of Srila Prabhupada's organization. And if I can, in fact, draw your attention to the slideshow playing behind me, the extent to which Srila Prabhupada's organization has expanded and grown, not just on the African continent, but on every single continent around the world. And we can see just the influence that Srila Prabhupada had as a person and on us as individuals, even though we didn't have the opportunity to meet him in physical form. Now I'd like to actually call up our last speaker. Mr. Musa is actually the CEO of Avon, and he will come and address us a little bit and give us his thoughts on the movie and the screening today.
Just to give a bit of context, firstly, Hare Krishna. Not Avon. Avon's a cosmetic company. I don't know much about cosmetics, as you can see. But it's Avalon, but thank you for that. When Sureka asked me a few moments ago to say a few words, I was happy to respond to her request. And I think the people that have spoken before me have more than adequately covered so much of what is important, I think, in terms of the message that this wonderful Swami has encapsulated in his life's message. From a personal experience, as many of you possibly know, I was born Muslim. I went to a Christian primary school, a Jewish high school. I had a stint in Durban for a while, and I met many of the devotees at the Chariot Festival that occurred, I think, in April every year, if I'm not mistaken. And so my life has been very enriched by being touched and learning from people of different religions, cultures, communities. I, like Jack, I'm not known to be a particularly religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person. And I think I'm very blessed that my parents gave me the opportunity to be exposed to all of these different dimensions. My family were also politically involved, so I grew up in Canada. And I give you these dimensions because I think the culmination of all these dimensions is what made me more attentive to celebrating our common humanity. And I think that is the most important thing. I think that is the message of what Swami, in essence, was saying and has conveyed over the years. And it's an amazing legacy that he's left behind. He, like many other great global leaders, have left such important messages behind, which I think are so pivotal, not just in terms of the political landscape and business landscape of our country, but globally. And in closing, I touch on two dimensions. I hear talking about business and Jack talking about the political scenario. From a business point of view, and the point you make about social media, it is so true that young people today are feeling so disconnected. You know, they're able to communicate through electronic pulses, but they're not really able to have a conversation around a coffee table. They're all sitting on their phones, and they are connected and yet disconnected. And in that sense, I think social media has been part of creating, it can be used for good, but in many ways has also disconnected us. There's a famous saying that says, we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like, and I think that sums it up. So I would like to wish all of you every success in this screening. It has certainly deserved great accolades. I think Sureka and the team have done a wonderful job in making it happen. We have responded to the request by officially releasing it as a commercial film next Friday, and we hope that the response will be there. So it's been open for sales, and so I think it depends on all of you to spread the word. I'm not sure how many people know it's released, but it's available to sell. And I think in terms of touching on Jack's point, as I round off in wishing all of you well, is that we live in a world, I think, and the message of Swamiji is important for the world. We live in a world, as Martin Luther King said, we live in a world with guided missiles and misguided men. And I think these messages are important to realign our thinking. Thank you very much, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. We now bring the program to an end. Apologies that we are pressed for time and we've had to cut out our panel discussion. I'd like to thank each and every single guest that came here today. And we invite you to have some drinks and popcorn with us outside after this. And just as a parting note, I think it's always amazing to be part of an experience like this as an individual. The role that Srila Prabhupada and many of the mentors that I look up to sitting in the audience right now have played on my life as an individual growing within the society and as a person, it has been immense. And I'd like to thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak today and serve in this capacity. So we invite you again for drinks and popcorn outside. We hope that you do go out and see the film. Again, I'd just like to point out that the books are available outside and you can purchase those too. Thank you again, and Hare Krishna.